On today's Locked On Giants podcast, Dave Syvertsen of Ourlad Scouting Service joins us to talk Giants draft class, the values, the plans, the UDFAs, the fits, and much more. That's coming your way next here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all of my written work. And as always, we welcome on in our Blue Crew community members, our everydayers, our newcomers, and everybody in between. And thank you for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And on today's show, I'm pleased to welcome back Dave Syvertsen, aka Ourlad Cy on X. He is a senior draft analyst for Ourlad Scouting. We had him on before the draft, and I figured let's circle back because he was just so good the first time around. We'll circle back and get a little bit more. So, Cy, welcome on into the program.
Thanks again for having me on so much. It's a lot of fun to talk about the draft before it actually happens, but I get equally excited about what actually to talk about it. After the draft and actually talk about what happened, because you spend so much time speculating and projecting. What actually happened is actually what matters the most.
Absolutely. Inside, we're going to break all that down. We're going to talk about the Giants draft picks. We're going to talk a little bit about the undrafted free agents, and then we'll take a look at the roster and just kind of see where this roster stands in your opinion. So let's start off with the Giants' value that they got in this draft class. How do you rank that?
I mean, this was a starter draft, meaning a lot of grades in rounds 2, 3, and maybe a little bit of 4, right? And that is, if you look at the meat and potatoes of a lot of rosters league-wide, that's where a lot of these guys can be found. It's not necessarily the all-pros and the pro bowlers, which is what you give that first-round grade to, and you spend so much time talking about and fantasizing about winning football. You really got to hit rounds 2, 3, and 4, and there was a lot of grades in that area of the draft. And when I look at the first 5 picks, that they are all starter plus grades, meaning I project these guys to be starters at some point within their rookie contracts, years 1 or 2 especially. And then you have the guys at the top that you want to build the foundation of the roster. Walking out of the draft with 2 or 3 is ideal, but 5, that's something that you have to write home about.
In terms of what the Giants did, we all knew going in that they might look at quarterback, but then again, it was very widely reported that they were going to go Abdul Carter if he was on the board, because the assumption was Travis Hunter would not be on the board. So when you look at that, what they did in the first round, Carter, not a surprise, but were you surprised that the Giants traded back into the bottom of the first round? And were you surprised with the Jaxson Dart pick?
There were a lot of rumors that the Giants were going to get into the back half of the first round, and it might have been speculation, but it did seem like there were a lot of conversations had with multiple teams somewhere in the 21 to 32 mark, because you do have to lay the foundation of trade talks far before draft weekend, and it's really hard to keep things tight to the chest when you're getting other programs involved, people outside of your building in these discussions. So it seemed like, no, it wasn't much of a surprise, but who it would be for, I really thought, just like everyone else, it was going to be Shedeur Sanders or Jaxson Dart. But if you go to the physical skill set of what Brian Daboll has had a lot of success with and what he looks for, it shouldn't surprise anybody that Jaxson Dart was the guy.
In terms of what Jaxson Dart does well and how he fits in this Giants offense, I mean, what do you look at?
He's a very brave thrower. There isn't a throw on the field he doesn't believe he can make, and he plays like that as well. There are quite a few throws on tape where he should not have made. He thought he could fit it to that tight window, but you kind of want that in an offense that has been lacking explosives. Brian Daboll has talked about that over and over. You need more explosives to win today in the NFL, to have a really productive, efficient offense. You have to create big plays, and to do that, you have to have a quarterback that maybe he's not always thinking correctly. Maybe he's got too much confidence. You'd rather try to temper that a little bit, reel in the wild horse, rather than try to inject that into someone. So that's something that stands out on tape to me, is there's not a throw that he's not willing to make. And physically, what I love to see in Jaxson Dart is that he can truly layer the football. He's got a lot of different tempos and speeds and trajectories on the ball based on where the defense is, what coverage he's reading, and even who he's throwing the football to. I mean, he had multiple NFL wide receivers. One of them came with him to the Giants, Antwain Wells, and Trey Harris, and Jordan Watkins. All three guys are going to be on NFL rosters this summer in training camps, and he threw the ball to them differently, one-to-one. That, to me, shows a guy that's really in tune with the offense, but also the personnel around him.
When you say he threw the ball differently, what exactly do you mean?
Trajectory, tempo, velocity, in between layers of the defense, between linebackers and safeties to the corners. I mean, he really does know how to change the tempo on a ball. Does he know, hey, I can put more air under the ball because Jordan Watkins, the deep threat that got drafted on day 3, he's going to go get it. But hey, Trey Harris, he's not a guy that can separate. I got to get the ball on a line to him as soon as possible. Those are the kind of things that you really, when you watch a lot of football and you watch a lot of quarterbacks throw a lot of passes, you can pick up on little subtle things. And it seems to me that Jaxson Dart, a 41-game starter, by the way, he truly does. He's very in tune mentally with the game. The physical gifts are easy to see, but to me, it seems like he's very mentally in tune with situational football.
Going back to Abdul Carter, again, no surprise there, but a big question mark is, how might they use him, considering they have Burns, they've got Chauncey Golston, they've got Thibodeau, they got Dexter Lawrence, who plays up on the line there. What do you think is going to be the best role for Abdul Carter, at least to start the season?
It's going to be a challenge for Shane Bowen. And I actually tweeted this out there and got some mixed results. I'm not questioning his ability to do so. I say this is a challenge. I can't really look back on any player or any situation that Bowen has had under his tutelage and really came out on the other side with this kind of talent and trying to inject everyone, but also keep everyone fresh. But if he can find that perfect formula, find the recipe to the best possible defense, in my opinion, it's going to be, hey, in third and gotta have it's in the fourth quarter and you're up 4, you're finding a way to get all these guys on the field. What I love about Abdul Carter is the experience he has off the ball. He can be an off-ball linebacker. You let Burns and Thibodeau rush the outside, Dexter Lawrence in the middle. And in this division especially, right, and Shane has said this, you need to build your roster to win your division first, and then you worry about the rest. Jalen Hurts and Jaden Daniels were number 2 and number 3 in the NFL in yards by a quarterback in rushing. And you need a guy that can spy the quarterback. And I think that might be one of Abdul Carter's secret hidden gems to his entire contribution to this defense, especially early on, where it's, hey, we're not going to give you a ton of responsibility, but shadow that guy. Do not let him escape the pocket. And then you can let those guys let loose, maybe even abandon their rush lanes at sometimes, knowing that you have that backup plan right behind you.
Hey, Giant fans, scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Upwork offers fast and easy hiring. Posting a job is free and simple, and within a day, you'll have multiple qualified candidates to choose from, giving you options to find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's Upwork, UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Sai, what about day 2 and day 3 picks? Where did the Giants get the best value in your opinion?
Man, I mean, I'm looking at the Cam Skattebo pick at the top of the 4th round as the top value pick of that for the weekend. In regard to immediate contribution and where I had him graded, he was my 5th graded running back in this class. I had a 2nd round grade on him, even though his running style, his body type, his lack of top end speed, it's not for everyone. But the mistake when you're watching Cam Skattebo play is to say he's not a good athlete. His 39.5-inch vertical was the 2nd best among all running backs at the NFL Combine this year. This is a guy that has the almost identical body type to Ashton Genty, almost to the 1/8 of an inch with his arm size and wingspan. I mean, he has the exact build that is very low to the ground, very balanced pre and post contact. And honestly, he plays with a few screws loose, and you kind of want that.
Yeah, for sure. What about Darius Alexander? What did you like about that pick?
You know, Giants fans, here's an image of Darius Alexander that I had while watching him in the fall, and I wrote it down on my sheet. Leonard Williams. If you remember when Dexter Lawrence really ascended from good to great, he had Leonard Williams next to him. And Darius Alexander is a very similar style football player in that he can move in and out 3 or 4 different roles on the defensive line based on where you want to put Dexter Lawrence, because in my opinion, Dexter Lawrence is his best version when you move him around, not just a nose tackle. You put him at the 3 tech, you put him outside even occasionally, but you need to have another defensive lineman that can do that as well. That might be the best value Darius Alexander brings, is the ability to play an amoeba and just move back and forth left and right. But his physical skill set that I love the most, and I look for this all the time in evaluation, how heavy his hands are in combination with 34+ inch arms. If you really know how to use your upper body and you can bend well enough, hands in length, you are going to be a handful, no pun intended, for blockers to try and handle. And that is a guy that I think you give him Patterson as a position coach, who's one of the best in the game. You combine his mindset and his physical tool set that he has shown, you might have something that actually could end up being a Leonard Williams caliber player.
Interesting. They sure could use one of those, right?
Yes, they could. I mean, that was the number one thing I saw on this defensive roster last year. They just did not have enough support on the defense line.
Yeah, I definitely agree. All right. Now, so what about the 2 7th-round picks? They had Fidone, the tight end, and Corey Black, the cornerback. What can those guys bring right away, and what do you like about those picks?
Yeah, I mean, trait-based picks, and this is what we've seen this be a little bit of a trend. Not every pick, but a trend with Joe Schoen is, hey, late in the draft, I hate to say you're throwing a dart, you're throwing with a dart with a blindfold on, but the odds of these guys of hitting are very rare. So in my opinion, you'd rather take a chance on someone that really could end up being a big-time player. And Fidone, I mean, this guy's been on the radar since he was in high school. There was one tight end nationally that graded out higher or was ranked higher than Brock Bowers. You want to know who it was? It was Fidone. And you're not going to weigh that into NFL evaluation that someone was good in high school. We know that. But just goes to show how good of an athlete this kid is, and can be. But he had significant knee problems, enough that I bet some teams cross him off the list. But we saw his best football. And when it comes to size metrics and ball skills, right? As a tight end, you're never going to be the quickest, most sudden, fastest athlete on the field. You're kind of almost borderline easy to blanket for NFL safeties and even some linebackers these days. But what you need to have is a radius. And this kid's combination of length, height, wingspan, and even his hand size. I mean, he is bigger than big, and he gets to the ball away from his frame. So you combine all these traits, it's hard not to like him. And he had good tape in 2024. If you took away the knee problems and say, hey, they never happened, I bet this kid's a 3rd-round pick. So I believe in this tight end room, to me, is very unstable. Theo Johnson, I know the staff loves him, but he's a project. He's a baby deer. We're still trying to see him evolve into something. He's coming off an injury as well. Daniel Bellinger, after a couple of years, you could kind of say he is what he is. And now, what is there in that room after them? So the door's wide open for him. Black is another trait-based pick, a lot of speed, a lot of experience in press coverage, and he can run and chase. I mean, you're not going to outrun this kid down the field. But again, is there enough field there at corner? We don't know. That Oklahoma State defense was a little tough to watch over the past couple of years, but there was enough flashes on tape in a room that might look very different in a year or two. And you'd rather have some options in-house that can fill the shoes of someone that might depart, rather than trying to fill it in an offseason, hoping you find someone for next year. So it was a really smart pick by Schoen and staff.
All right, now, so I want to ask you about the undrafted free agents that the Giants are reportedly bringing in. And I say reportedly because they're not signed as of yet. So we have to say reportedly. But what names stood out to you? And, who do you think has a legitimate chance of maybe slipping onto the roster?
I mean, there's a trio of wide receivers that I think are going to have a fighting shot at a roster that it is a little crowded. If you walked into the wide receiver room right now, you're like, ooh, there's 6-7 guys here that probably have a shot at making this roster, not even including these guys. But Antwain Wells, the teammate of Jaxson Dart, started off at James Madison, absolutely tore it up out there, went to South Carolina, put together a lot of good tape, but an injury last year, it kind of took him off the radar a little bit. And he never really seemed to find his flow in that Mississippi offense. But I'll tell you what, preseason 2023, all right, so not last year, the year before that, I had Antwain Wells as a potential first rounder, the guy that could rise up. I make a list of guys that, hey, keep an eye on them. They may rise up. He was on that list. There's something there with him. So I believe he might be the most talented receiver, but even Daquan Felton, who's got great size, great speed and ability to go up and get the ball, just a little too many drops on tapes. And that's another, those two guys, especially are the ones that I'm looking at. But the Bo Collins from Notre Dame was the third one that I think has a real shot. Every time I watched Notre Dame, I said, hey, that dude's an NFL receiver. He's got the NFL body. He's got NFL routes. He catches the ball and turns upfield, but a lot of inconsistencies to his route running and ball skills. So if he can clean up some of the edges to his skill set, I think he's got a real shot at making this roster. And we don't know what the wide receiver room will demand in terms of injuries and who sticks around. Those three guys have a real shot at making some noise here.
When you look at what Joe Schoen did, he didn't have to get a guy because he had a glaring hole. He basically plugged a lot of holes in free agency, albeit some of them were temporary, short term. But when you look at what he's done with the draft and with this roster in general, is there any area that you're still a little iffy about that you felt like maybe he could have done a little bit more, maybe through the draft, undrafted free agency, or what have you?
Trading up for Jaxson Dart, in hindsight, in my opinion right now, and I had a day 2 grade on Jaxson Dart, but I think it was a smart move because you get that 5th-year option and you didn't know what some of these teams, especially Cleveland, was going to do. So if you have a guy, I always say, if your quarterback coach or your head coach that is a quarterback background, if he really believes in a quarterback, you go get him. However, there's an asterisk next to that. They did have to give up a 3rd-round pick and a future 3rd-round pick to get Jaxson Dart. And because they did not have that 3rd-round pick, there were just some moves that you just couldn't make. You just didn't have the numbers. And I came into the draft saying I would have loved another explosive playmaker added to this offense. It could have been a running back. It could have been a tight end. But I was looking at the wide receiver room. I think they're a little vulnerable there. Even though they used that 5th pick overall on Malik Neighbors last year, they re-signed Darius Slayton, who's a very savvy, what you're getting veteran. Wan'Dale Robinson, to me, is an unknown. He's coming up on a contract year. I'm not sure he's going to be worth what he would get in the open market. And that leaves a spot open in the slot. But Malik Neighbors likes to line up in the slot sometimes. So is Theo Johnson. So you could have gotten an outside burner to maybe push Jalen Hyatt a little bit and say, hey, your time here is not guaranteed. So that was one area that I was hoping the Giants would add to, would be another explosive creator on offense, and they weren't able to pull it off.
Let's talk about offensive line. The Giants drafted Marcus Bowe.
Yep.
But do they have enough on that offensive line, especially at that guard position? I mean, to me, I look at it, Evan Neal's going to make the conversion. I don't know how successful he's going to be. I mean, are you concerned with the depth they have on offensive line?
Yeah, I mean, guard, interior offensive line in general was very high on my list. I think it was the number 2 need I had. And I didn't say that it had to be right away. But I did have to add to it. And Marcus Bowe was a 3rd-round caliber player that they got in the 5th round. So that was a really smart and educated pick by the team. But you also can't count on him to be a factor this year. I mean, that almost never happens, right? You have a day 3 offensive lineman all of a sudden be the answer. And right guard was a need prior to the draft. They have a lot of options right now. That's the one positive, is that you have 3 or 4 guys that can walk into training camp this summer and say, hey, that job is mine. I'm taking that job, because that brings out the best in everybody. Competition. Someone's trying to take your job. Let's see what you're made of. So that ethos right there, that aura that's going to be in that room, that's the best you can ask for if you did not actually sign or draft your answer. So I look at the guard, interior offensive line in general, and I say at least they have a lot of options to choose from. They might not have the sure thing answer, but there are options. And I don't think we could have said that a couple of years ago.
In particular, I think a lot of people are going to be interested if Evan Neal can make that conversion to guard. I mean, I know he played it at Alabama, but this is the NFL. So what kind of, uphill battle is he looking at? And do you think he can, that he has the basics to make this conversion?
His number one thing that helps him is the experience. So this is not learning a new position. I know it was multiple years ago. I think it was 2019, the last time he played right guard, but at least he's got something to call back on. The number two thing I like the most, this is probably more important. The biggest issues Evan Neal has had since he's entered the NFL have been very space dependent. There's a correlation between his worst tape and space. That is where we saw the worst. And when you're inside, yes, defensive tackles are getting faster, quicker. There's a lot of complex games, but you're in a hallway with rooms on the side. There's some help to either side of you. Even if you're not double teaming someone, there's a limited amount of space that your defender can go to, and that alone is going to help him. I also think he has the power, the play style of a guard. When you watch him run block, especially last year, I thought he was really good at moving downhill, getting guys off the ball, and doing the number one thing that every offensive line coach wants. That's displacing defenders, meaning moving NFL linemen away from where they want to be. It's a very hard thing to do, and he's done that plenty, so we know he can do it. So if he can just approach this with a new, fresh approach and be optimistic and confident, start over, fresh start, and really apply himself, I believe that's going to be the long-term home for him. Whether it's in New York or not, I don't know.
So a guy that a lot of people aren't talking about, but who I think people that would say the jury is still out on, is center John Michael Schmitz. They didn't take a center. They did bring in some guys who can play center. Greg Van Roten can certainly play center if they need to. But looking at Schmitz, who's going into his third year, where does he need to get better? Where has he struggled most?
I mean, he hasn't been very durable. He's either missing games or he's playing through a lot of pain. And I do think that has somewhat prohibited him from really reaching his athletic ceiling, which was already pretty low. I mean, we knew when he entered the league from Minnesota, he didn't make the NFL because of quickness and speed, right? That's how Marcus Bowe made his name, made at Purdue. He's a very good, quick body control athlete. Schmitz is intelligent. He's powerful. He can hold his ground. Daboll's very good on gap integrity and maintaining the inside of the pocket. He wants all that space for the quarterback. That's why they drafted him. But in terms of him playing consistent football and being consistently healthy, and the question right now that I personally ask, is he truly athletic enough to play lineman in the NFL? And I'll make a prediction right now. I believe Marcus Bowe is going to be a center in the next year or two, especially if Schmitz goes backwards.
Interesting. I mean, you don't see Marcus Bowe as a guard tackle. You see him more as an interior offensive lineman.
I think it's going to be guard center. I think Daboll, if you would know more than me, I believe he said he's going to start off at tackle. Mm-hmm. I believe even whether he had 32 or 33-inch arms, I know there's a debate about that at the Combine and Pro Day and their personal measurements that the Giants do themselves. No matter what, he's very short armed for the outside, and it does show up. I mean, I watched his Penn State snap by snap, and they have multiple future NFL pass rushers on that defense, and it looked like the length gave him a lot of problems, and he's only going to see more of that at the next level. I liken him to Dominic Pooney, the third-round pick from Kansas that San Francisco drafted last year, tackled to guard convert, and right away he tore it up. And I believe he has that kind of ceiling inside at the next level. And he did work at center in the pre-draft process for teams, so that's something just to keep an eye on.
All right, so a couple more, and I want to stay on the defensive side of the ball if I could. Yeah. The Giants revamped that defensive secondary, 2 new starters there, but really, still a young defensive secondary. How much is the work that the emphasis that they put on the front seven? How much is that? Do you think that's going to help that back unit?
I mean, it's enormous. And I think the goal of the Giants was to create a defense that can get to the passer with 4 defenders. And it's when you have 7 guys in coverage, that's an enormous help. That really almost makes everyone feel on the back seven that they can have support. They have support over the top, left, right. To me, it's going to be about chemistry. But I do believe they built the roster with experienced youth. There's a lot of experience in that secondary, even though the number of age, it's very low. Adebo, Holland, Banks, these guys are young kids, but they have some experience. But now it's going to be about chemistry. And that's going to be the biggest test that these coaches and players need to take on, is really develop, hey, I know you like the back of my hand and vice versa, because the ideal defense is to rush with 4. And in this defense with Abdul Carter on the field, it might be rush with 4 with a QB spy. So really, I mean, I believe their offseason and what they did in the secondary, and even with the depth additions on the defensive line, it gives them options. Ideal world, I know Bowen wants to rush with 4 and have 7 in coverage, but I think they have so many options now because of how they built the defense through free agency in the draft that they don't have to put all their eggs in one basket.
And then, so I want to ask you about linebacker, because, this is a position that nobody talked about. I know I mentioned it real quickly, but McFadden's in his final year of his contract. Okereke is collecting less of his guaranteed money. And there was some talk that maybe there was a little bit of disenchantment because he struggled so much last year. How much, two-part question, how much is Carter going to maybe help calm that situation down, given his experience as an off-ball linebacker? And what do you see as the future maybe for that inside linebacker spot?
Yeah, we talked about linebacker a little bit leading up to the draft, and that Mike McFadden's a free agent next year, and Okereke could be a guy that gets cap casualty cut. They want to save some money and let him loose unless he plays a really high-level football this year. So what's the answer next year? I don't think it's Abdul Carter. I don't think you're drafting him to be either one of those replacements. I think in certain looks he can be, but in terms of your every down base defense, you might not have next year's linebackers on this team right now. And that's something that I think everyone might need to accept. But let's keep an eye on and not forget last year's 7th rounder, Darius Musow from UCLA. But the guy I'm looking forward to watching this summer is Deontay Johnson. The guy has flashed enough, and they keep him around for a reason. There's something there with him and we see linebackers come out of nowhere league-wide every year. And that's the guy, if you had to say, hey, if there's one savior that's on this roster that could be a long-term answer, it's that kid.
All right, Cy, great stuff as always. Always appreciate your expertise. He is Dave Syvertsen, Ourlad's side of Ourlad's scouting services. Make sure you check them out. They're on the web. They've got a draft guide that they just put out. And I believe still put out a post-draft guide?
Yes, we do. You can order the draft review. It'll be, we put a lot of work into it, and we wait till a lot of reports come out, OTAs, mini camps. So that'll be in your inbox in June. And I would say back half of June.
All right. And Eric, he's at ourlads.com, right? That's the website?
Yes, yep. That's it.
All right. So he's Dave Syvertsen. I'm Patricia Traina. Giant fans, thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Keep it here all week long. We'll have more guests. And of course, we will have rookie mini camp coverage coming up here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Have a great one, everybody.